for joining us on Facebook Live today. We are doing our Berry County Science Festival. I'm so excited for the next presentation. The next presentation is Wildlife Detectives. It is by the Michigan DNR Wildlife Division. And as I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, if you do have those field observation reports, that if you did pick up one of those STEAM grab and go kits, this is a good time to get it out. If you don't have one, no worries. You can still have fun during this presentation.
Hello, Wildlife Detective Rachel here. Have you ever been walking through the woods and found something suspicious? Something that you can tell happened here, but you're just not sure what? Maybe you came across a tuft of hair, or maybe a set of tracks that mysteriously ended. Maybe you found a fragment of bone or feathers and considered foul play had occurred here. You're probably standing in a crime scene. There are clues and evidence to what has happened here all around, and you will need your special skills as a wildlife detective to solve this mystery. Hi, I'm Rachel Leightner, and I work for the Michigan Department of Natural Resources Wildlife Division. While my title isn't technically wildlife detective, I have been trained on how to identify tracks, scat, feathers, and fur, and other clues to determine what animals have left them behind. Today, I'll be showing you the tricks of the trade so that you can be a wildlife detective too. All animals are part of the food chain. Some are predators and some are prey. When a predator is hungry, it will attack and eat prey. However, sometimes prey have defense mechanisms and are able to fight off a predator. Now, when this interaction occurs, it typically leaves some kind of evidence behind. So if we're not able to watch these interactions, how will we know how wildlife act? What motivated this encounter? Was it murder? Was it self-defense? Looking at the clues and evidence left behind can help us determine what happens in predator-prey situations. And this video will teach you how to investigate these types of crime scenes, what to look for, how to document it, and how to come to your own conclusions. Today we're heading into the Gordon Neck State Game Area in Kalamazoo County. Some hikers nearby heard a commotion, and when they came to check it out, found some feathers and tracks. We've decided to head into the woods to do some investigating, but first we need to make sure that we're well prepared. Let's go through our field pack to make sure we have all our equipment.
When I'm investigating a potential crime scene, there are a few things I like to take with me. First of all, a field observation report. Here is where I will write down any evidence I find. Notice it has a ruler on the side so that I can include measurements and a size reference if I find any tracks or scat. There are also places on the observation report to document information on the observation site. There's also a checklist of clues I might find and a place to sketch my findings and make conclusions. A few other things I like to bring are a clipboard and a pencil for writing, a tape measure and a quarter to use for a size reference just in case the ruler on my field observation report isn't quite what I need, and a field guide or two if you have one. There are lots of different types of field guides out there, and they all specialize in something different. Some can help you identify tracks or bird feathers or furs. Finally, make sure you're dressed for the weather, and now we're ready to go.
So we've arrived to where the encounter was reported, underneath these oak and maple trees. We're going to inspect the site from a distance at first, going through our field observation report to make sure that we don't step on any evidence before we can get in there. So why don't you take a second to pause this video and pull out your field observation reports, and we can fill these out together.
Here is your field observation report. To start, let's take a look at the box on the right side of the form, beginning with Observer. The person who is searching the area for observations should write their name down as the observer. Next, write down the date and time you're searching the site. It's important to record the date in case you want to look back at this report later rather than trying to remember the specific day. It's easier to just write it down. Next, the location and weather. These are two very important pieces of data to collect. Location is important because some wildlife species only live in specific regions of the state. For example, elk only live in the northeastern region of Michigan, so it would be very unlikely to find evidence of an elk down here in southwest Michigan. Taking note of where these observations occur can help narrow down what wildlife species are in the area. Likewise, the weather is also important. It can help you determine when this interaction occurred. For example, rain will wash away footprints, furs, feathers, and probably all other evidence suggesting some type of interaction occurred here. So for example, if it rained or snowed yesterday, but you find evidence of an encounter today, it would indicate that this interaction has occurred sometime after the snow or rainstorm and likely occurred within the last few hours.
Finally, we'll document our habitat type. This is also very important because only specific species live in some habitats. We'll want to take a look around to determine what kind of habitat we're in. This is mostly an upland forest. There's lots of older trees, there's debris and leaves on the ground, and lots of acorns and other foods for forest species.
In the description of the observation section, feel free to include any details you think might be important about this site. I've included details on where the site is located in relation to a nearby trail, just in case I need to return back to the site. I also noted that nearby are sugar maple and white oak trees. This could be an important clue as oak trees produce acorns, which are an essential food source for many forest-dwelling species. Now that we've completed this portion of our field observation report, let's inspect the rest of the area. As I inspect the area, I am working through the checklist found on the field observation report. I am searching the area for tracks, scat, hair, feathers, or any other clues that might give us an idea of what occurred here. As I find the evidence, I use a tape measure and quarter to take these measurements and record what I have found.
Okay, wildlife detectives, I found enough evidence here to suggest something mysterious has happened.
The first clue I found was an animal track. To properly document the track, I first set down the tape measure and the quarter next to the track to determine its size. Tracks left in the dirt or sand can be easily overlooked or destroyed if you're not careful near them. It's important to take detailed notes of the track, including the size, shape, if you can see the toes or the toenails are visible. It can also be helpful to sketch the track or take a photo so that you can research the animal tracks in a field guide or at a computer later in the day. The footprint I found appears to have 4 toes and a foot pad. While they may be difficult to see in this photo, there are 4 toenail marks in the dirt above the toe pads. The track is 2.5 inches tall and 1.5 inches wide. While the track is on the screen, feel free to pause this video and make a sketch of the track in your observation box on your field observation report. Next, I found a handful of hairs in the leaf litter. The hairs appear to be white, tan, and black in color. An interesting suite of colors and an important clue to help us determine what animal they belong to. It will be important to document these colors on our observation sheet. Also in the leaf litter next to the hairs, I found a pile of scat. Scat can be a good indicator of the animal's diet. For example, a predator or something that preys on mammals will likely have hairs in its scat. For example, this coyote scat. There are hairs evident. While an omnivore or herbivore scat could have berry seeds or plant matter that is evident. For example, this raccoon scat. The shape and size is also specific to the animal. For example, this black bear scat looks very similar to the raccoon scat. However, this ruler next to it shows us that the black bear scat is much bigger. The size and shape of scat will help us to determine what animal leaves it behind. The scat we found was in a small, spiraled pile that stood 1 inch tall and was 1 inch wide and is mostly consistent throughout. This is a peculiar looking scat and almost resembles a poop emoji. This could be a helpful clue. Let's pause a moment to sketch out this scat on our field observation report.
So if you want to sketch this, this is the time to do so.
In our crime scene, I also found a new set of tracks. And curiously, these tracks only lead into the crime scene, but then mysteriously disappear. These look different from the first set as there are only 3 toes and they're in a triangular pattern. The track is 5.5 inches long and 5 inches across. It appears that these footprints occur only a few inches from each other, suggesting that the animal walks on 2 feet. Let's pause to sketch this track for a moment and speculate what kind of animal leaves these tracks behind. Our final clue was one I almost overlooked. As I was examining the area, something caught my eye, directly above where the encounter occurred. Caught in the maple tree branch were a number of feathers. Feathers provide a lot of information about specific species. First of all, we know that these were left behind by a bird. The size of the feather can also give us an idea of the size of the bird, and usually the bigger the feather, the bigger the bird. Lastly, the pattern and colors of the feather give us a description of what this bird might look like. These feathers appear to be brown and black with horizontal lines and are about 12 inches long. Do you have any idea what this large bird with this type of pattern feathers might be? Take a moment to jot down your guesses on your field observation report. Okay, wildlife detectives, we've used our skills to thoroughly inspect this area and collect evidence of what has happened here. Let's review our observations and try to piece this mystery together. Let's start by checking out our observation form. Here are the things that we know. We have found evidence of 2 different animals because we found 2 very different sets of tracks. Let's examine the first track again. Does this shape look familiar to you? Have you ever taken your dog on a walk and noticed the footprint they leave behind in the mud? Does it look similar to this? It probably does. The overall shape suggests a canine left this track behind. Now, you might think it looks similar to a feline track. However, feline animals, like cats, have retractable claws, and therefore claw marks aren't visible in their footprints. So we can say with certainty that this track was left behind by a canine. We will need to use another one of our clues to narrow down what canine species it is. We know that we're in Lower Michigan, and in Lower Michigan there are wild foxes, both red and gray, coyotes, and the occasional domestic dogs. There are no wolves in the Lower Peninsula, so we can rule that animal out. To narrow down the canine species, let's take a look at the hairs we found, since it's likely that they belong to the same mammal that left this track behind. If we look at the color of the hairs, we will see that they are brown and coarse, with white flecks and black flecks weeded throughout. By using the process of elimination, we can narrow down the canine species that live in this region and have this kind of fur. Since they are not red or slate gray hairs, we can rule out a red fox and a gray fox. We also mentioned that we don't have wolves here, so there's no chance that this is left behind by a wolf. So what canine wildlife species does that leave us with? While the possibility of a domestic dog isn't off the table, these clues were most likely left behind by a coyote. Coyotes live through most of the state of Michigan and especially can be found in the southwest region of the Lower Peninsula. Coyotes are predators and at the top of the food chain in many Michigan food webs. They will prey on smaller mammals or other birds or really any other kind of food sources they can find when they're hungry. Coyotes are essential to our ecosystems because they provide the necessary service of making sure our small game populations aren't in overabundance. In fact, they make great neighbors and provide excellent pest control services while they feed on small mice and voles that might try to infiltrate your house. Now to our other set of clues. Earlier when you guessed what animal leaves this type of track behind, did you guess an avian species? If so, you were correct. These tracks are definitely from a bird. But with so many birds, how can we narrow it down? Let's look at the size again and use the process of elimination. Are these tracks from a songbird? No, these tracks are much too large. Due to the size of this track, we know that it's from a larger bird. If we look at the gait of the tracks, we can tell that the bird is actually walking rather than hopping around like songbirds do. Therefore, this is probably a ground nesting bird, meaning it's typical for the bird to be walking throughout the forest rather than flying. This is why it's important to consider habitat type. Let's pause a moment to think about some of the larger birds we know that live in Michigan. Canada geese, sandhill cranes, wild turkeys, great blue herons, trumpeter swans, and even the invasive mute swan. All of these birds have larger feet. However, only one of these birds is typically found in a dry forest such as this one. Geese, herons, and swans are mostly waterfowl species that prefer to live on or near bodies of open water. They also have webbed feet, and so the toes that we see in these tracks would not be as pronounced if it was a waterfowl species. Canada geese and sandhill cranes thrive in open grassy areas or agricultural areas. This leaves only one other option: the eastern wild turkey, which can typically be found eating acorns in open forests or feeding on insects in grassy open areas. If we want to confirm that the wild eastern turkey was the other animal involved in this encounter, we'll also need to review the scat and feathers that we found. Using our field guides and internet resources, we can find images of turkey feathers and turkey scat to confirm that these were all left behind by the same animal. My Birds of Michigan field guide provides information on how to identify the animal according to their feathers, height, coloration, and different markings, and other biological information. It does appear that these black, brown, and white barred feathers match the wing feathers of a turkey. This field guide does not have information on animal scats, so we'll have to use the internet to confirm the scat is from a wild turkey. This information on how to tell the differences between male and female turkeys from the Maryland Department of Natural Resources is exactly what we need to find our answer. Look at the female turkey scat. It is identical to the scat that we found. Now we can confirm that not only was there a turkey in the crime scene, but it was a female turkey at that. We are ready to review the facts and make a prediction of what occurred here. Here are the facts. There were both turkey and coyote tracks leading to the spot. It was under an oak tree and there was an abundance of acorns, which is a turkey's preferred food source. The animals likely came into contact with each other because something had to have pulled out the coyote's fur and loosened the turkey's feathers. We can see that the leaves have been moved into an unnatural way and the twigs have been broken, suggesting that there maybe was a struggle or that something was trying to escape. But here is where the watchful eye of a wildlife detective becomes crucial. Remember how the turkey tracks suddenly disappeared? There is no evidence of the turkey walking away from the crime scene while the coyote tracks continue moving out. What does this mean? Why would the turkey tracks disappear? Let's pause the video and write your prediction in the conclusion section of the field observation report. So what do you think happened here? I'll tell you my speculations. I predict that the turkey was walking through the forest and found a patch of acorns to feed on, when suddenly a hungry coyote passing through noticed the bird and was desperate for a turkey dinner. The coyote attacked the turkey, and the turkey was able to defend herself with her sharp talons and ankle spurs. What is unclear to me is how this encounter ended. With no turkey tracks leading away from the crime scene and no turkey body to be found, it's almost impossible to know how it ended. Did the coyote kill and eat the turkey? Turkeys can also fly, so did the turkey take off flying and escape? Is that why we found feathers in the tree limbs? Did the turkey take off flying, but maybe it was injured and didn't make it very far? Even after we have found several clues and evidence of what might have happened here, given the information, we only can simply make our best speculations. Our detective skills helped us make it this far in the investigation and led to some potential outcomes. So which will you decide? These types of predator-prey interactions happen all the time and almost always leave some type of evidence behind. Even if we aren't able to say with 100% certainty of what has happened here, being able to identify the clues, properly record them, and make those predictions will help us to understand the animal world a little better. Now that you're a trained wildlife detective, it's time for you to head outside and start investigating.
Thanks for joining us today on our investigation. If you enjoyed learning about Michigan's wildlife, please visit michigan.gov/wildlife to learn more.
So did you learn how to be a wildlife detective? I know I did. I filled out my sheet. Hopefully you did. That was by Michigan DNR, the Wildlife Division.